Hello there. Welcome to another talk, another podcast, another meditation. Because all my talks are meditations. I talk in here like I am in general. We all have, inner talk or how, you are with yourself, within yourself. And I'm like this in general. So if you're around me, this is what you get. What you hear with me is what on here is what you get in real life. But today's talk is called Your Only Real Friend is God. Now, this talk might go to someone that really gets this. That's my hope. But when I had this spiritual awakening, at I get new spiritual awakenings all the time, but the first big one at the age of 24, 10 years ago, I'm 34 now. I was a person that didn't really fit in. I just always, even as a little child, I felt like I was in the wrong family. And no one would say anything bad to me. Everything would be fine. And I would just used to have these thoughts that, like, E.T. call home kind of thing. Then surprise, surprise, I get the awakening. I'm the only family member yet to have a spiritual awakening that I'm aware of. But yeah, I got kicked out of school when I was 14. So definitely the odd one out. And at the age of 24, I had this spiritual awakening. Because I've said before, what happened was I sat down, it was morning, and I had enough of everything. And, what I did then was I let God lead the way. Unconsciously, I didn't know that I was doing that. But I unconsciously let God lead the way. It was the first time in my life I was heart-based. And what I basically done was I ignited the heart chakra. And it ignited an awakening. And so I agree most of what Eckhart Tolle says, but he doesn't agree that willpower manifests a spiritual awakening. For me, it did. And I didn't know anything about spiritual awakening or anything like that. And it was pure willpower. It was the willpower to change. But it's like God wants you to go within first, and then God will lead you the rest of the way. But you've got to go halfway. But even as a little child, I knew that something big was going to happen to me. I would look up at the stars, and it was almost like the stars were communicating with me and telling me about my future, and I couldn't tell anyone. And then, surprise, surprise, this big spiritual awakening happened. And this has not just happened to me. This has happened to lots of people around the planet. There's a mass spiritual awakening, and it started in 2012. People older than me, the New Age has been around, but that's when, as far as I know, that's when this mass awakening really kicked off. And that's when a lot of people started having their spiritual awakenings. But when I had the awakening, I chose to go within, right? Because that's where God is. It's within your heart chakra, within there. They say it's a tiny space. I would say it's an infinite space. But within the heart is the connection into God. I watch and listen to some mediums on YouTube, and they say that that heaven exists, and heaven, the heart energy is the energy of heaven. It's the doorway into heaven, so you can connect with spirit that way, apparently. But I do believe that I know that that's real, because that's how I got the spiritual awakening. I had enough, but I meant it so much, and it ignited this awakening. I just knew at that moment everything was going to change. It was like I had enough, really. But your only friend is God, and so, that's just it. The people that you have in your life, they're going to come and they're going to go. But the power within that God has, that every creature, every animal, every life form has, that is the friend that's never going to leave you. And you have to be at your lowest point. No one cares. I had a friend, that committed suicide. And I was in the same moment, but the only difference was a choice. I just chose to go within. And that's all it is. The chosen ones, people talk about chosen ones, I would say it's those that have had these big, unexpected spiritual awakenings. But they're chosen because they choose to be chosen. That's the thing. Everybody has the same power. Right? That's it. Everyone's got this God force within them. Jesus Christ, when he would do talks, and they said to him, "Where is this God?" And he said, "It's within you." But still people tell you to read the Bible. But he didn't say that. He said, "Look within." I'm not religious. Each to their own. If people want to have, whatever, But within. I actually do read books now. But the real book is the one within. I didn't read books before the Spiritual Awakening. And the only book I read before was a little children's fairy tale book. I can't remember the name of it. And I'm reading Anton LaVey's The Satanic Bible. Now, it sounds bad, but he's just talking about going with your instincts, going with what you feel, energy vampires he warns about. It's not really, Satanism or anything like that. Although you would think it with the way it sounds. But yeah, and I'm actually, I've read I think it's over half of it now. But back to the talking hand. That's your only real friend, is the power that's within the heart chakra. When there's no one there, that's all you've got left. And I think that's why it was easier for me. Because if you are a more conscious person, or it doesn't take much to be different in this world, because there's so much sheeple. There's even sheeple who don't know they're sheeple. What do I mean by that? Well, symbolic of a sheeple is probably someone wearing a face nappy. But you can get sheeple that are not wearing a face nappy. You can get sheeple that think they're awake, but they're actually, they're just doing what the system wants them to do. They might buy into this, to labeling people or something, and attacking people. Oh, that person's crazy, and you're just buying into what the system wants you to do. System makes up labels, calls people this, calls people that, and so, and so, because there's a mass awakening, we've all been sheeple, and that's what we're awakening from. One of the first questions that came after my spiritual awakening, first big one, was, why wasn't I awake before? You see, and that is your only power. That and friend, I'll add as well. That is the only friend and power you've got, is the light of consciousness, this infinite love that is within the heart. And at the age of 24, I sat down and had enough, and for the first time in my life, I unconsciously ignited within the heart area. and then everything changes, and you've only got to go halfway. See, when I talk about nothingness, but it doesn't mean I don't believe in God. God is the power, this miracle force within absolute non-existence, nothing. It's a miracle force within nothing that makes life possible. And this force is a life manifester. And ultimately, like what Deepak Chopra says, that's what oneness is. It's Deepak Chopra says it's the one nothing. That's why it's oneness, because you can only ever get one nothing. Because nothingness is all of infinity. Right? And that's the true self. Right? And so it's all about tapping into that the only real friend you've got, which is God. And so you've got to go within the heart chakra. That's the real Bible. Because then you're tapping into the Akashic Records, which is an infinite book of all possibility and infinite possibility. So the human mind I don't think can get its head around infinity, because it's not designed to understand it. And it's an astonishing thing, and the mind can try and like work it out, but it can't, because it's infinity. We're so programmed to have that's got to have a beginning and an end. But it's so logical as well, because if everything has to come from nothing, and nothingness would be infinity. So if there was a life, force, power, God within that, it would be infinity. But that's your only real friend. So you've got to put this friend, this power, before everything else. And when you're doing that, you're really putting yourself first. Because you've got to become your best self. Because love is like a cup. It's, if your cup is full, you'll want to give more. You'll be more, you'll want to give love. When you haven't got much, you might think you're loving, but you're running on empty, basically. So this awakening, one of the things it taught me was just to serve myself and to be kind to myself. Go with what you want in the present moment, right? And this has been a journey of being more with the flow state, harmony, the present moment. Because within that, within that present moment, the harmony, flow, that's God. You see? And it means that you are God yourself, and you don't need an outside force to help you. The second coming of Christ isn't Christ one man, because one man cannot change the world. It has to happen en masse. You see? And so when I think of God, I don't think of a separate power. I think of a power en masse, like a great awakening. That's the second coming of Christ. It's Christ consciousness, which is this God force I'm talking about. Shakti, Shiva, Kundalini, energy orgasms, that's God. Right? That's the source of all life. Twin flames, all that stuff. It is a romantic pathway also. That's the pathway of alignment with Source and God. And that's ultimately the real meaning of marriage as well. It's really an alignment with the one other half of your soul, if you're talking about twin flames. But in that you're aligned, you're returning to the only true friend, which is God. And that force is it's just a oneness force. A one infinite love. And I'm just going to leave it there. For latest updates, talks, news, research, so much more, Please do check my website at www.lovelightfamily.com. Thank you.